Well folks, it is finally here. Update 8, the last significant update for Hell Let Loose in 2020, has officially released, and there is a lot to love in this update. There is a lot going on. There are some key changes in terms of meta of the game, some updates to some underpowered classes and factions, and also some very significant improvements of the game and changes and introductions of content. In this video today, I'm going to give you guys the full lowdown of what is in Hell Let Loose Update 8 and things that you should look out for that will change how you play the game. Now before we get underway with this video today, there is a significant optimization pass in Update 8 for Hell Let Loose, and if you haven't updated the game or haven't played it for a while, I highly recommend that you do a fresh install of the game. Delete everything related to Hell Let Loose on your system, make sure there are no leftover files by searching Hell Let Loose in the search bar on your file explorer, and also completely deleting the shader cache on your graphics card. Deleting that and doing a clean graphics card driver installation alongside deleting Hell Let Loose's folders will wield significant results in this update, and I'll leave a link to how to do both of those things in the description below. So let's get down to business and talk about what has released in Hell Let Loose Update 8. And there's two changes I want to start with right away that are smaller changes, but something the community has definitely been crying out for. Number one, the Kar 98 has been officially buffed. It has a faster cycling speed, and I actually believe the kick of the weapon has been slightly reduced. This is a buff that has been officially confirmed by the team, and it's something to very much look forward to. Number two, and probably even more significantly, standard riflemen now have the option to use the G43 semi-automatic rifle once they reach level 6. This is a key change to the game that is going to bring more semi-autos to the game to try and bring the German faction more on par with the Garens in the US faction. These more minor changes and balancing changes are things that will definitely improve the standing of the game over time, and if you've ever felt like you're just taking a beating in the German faction, you now actually have options to overcome that. Next up is Hurtgen Forest has been completely overhauled, and I mean completely overhauled. From the layout of the map to the new additions of a German and US offensive and updated warfare layout, the map has been completely renewed in this sense, and it's been given a fresh coat of paint as well. You're seeing some of this gameplay in the background and it looks fantastic. Hurtgen Forest, from initial feedback I've seen online as well, is now widely being received as a great map in the game, and the changes have been important. They've been good improvements, the flanking routes are there, it no longer feels like you're constantly out in the open, and there are layers of micro cover in this map that make it much more playable. I also find that the objective capture points are much more interesting, including a few more buildings and main structures that make it a far more interesting warfare situation compared to the previous iteration. We've also gotten rid of that horrible, hideous fog, which is a nice change of pace, and ultimately the map just looks and feels much better. It's also running incredibly well. On update 7, my system usually got in the region of about 80 FPS. At the moment, I'm clocking somewhere in around the region of 100 FPS with the same graphical settings, which is a very exciting improvement to see. I'm also noting more consistency of frame rate as well, so less dips, less dives, and less hitching, which is something that's much better. It definitely isn't completely eradicated, and there are a few drops here and there, but it has been changed in a good way. Speaking of optimization, across the board I've seen anywhere in the regions of 20 to 30 FPS improvements, which is very exciting. One thing I have noted though is that the clarity TAA setting is not playing very friendly with some maps anymore. I don't know whether it's down to the changes graphically speaking, because there have been graphic settings changes, but clarity TAA is sometimes appearing a little bit pixelated, and it's actually maybe gone back to standard TAA, but the game itself is looking much less muddy, graphically looks fantastic, and performance-wise is definitely getting there. Again, still a few FPS drops here and there, but fundamentally much more reduced than we've previously seen in the past. Optimization is a big reason why a lot of people have put down this game, and I'm glad to report that most of you may be able to pick it back up now, even on lower end systems. Now, bearing in mind I'm getting a 20 to 30 FPS increase with a 2080 Ti, but some people are reporting 20 FPS increases with cards like 1660 Ti's, which is very important for the smoothness of the game. I should also note that huge explosions such as the bombing runs have actually significantly reduced their impact in terms of game performance. Next up, trucks have been added to the game. A whole manner of transport trucks and light recon vehicles are now available in the game, which is fantastic, and both of them feature bullet penetration and can be penned by individual infantry small arms fire and also destroyed by AT rocket rounds. But it does get rid of the whole walking simulator aspect of the game, and so far I haven't been able to report the handling or driving because I haven't had a chance to get hands-on, but it has seemed to improve the pacing of the game quite significantly. Satchel charges and the grease gun have been added to the game, and these are two new additions to the game that we haven't seen before. Satchel charges have fantastic explosive damage and can clear out infantry regiments as well as light vehicles, and I believe they even do some damage towards tanks as well. The grease gun is also available, I believe, for the engineer faction at the moment, and also one of the offensive assault classes. The engineer class has received an overall upgrade with a new fortification system. Engineers now have brand new fortifications that are much larger, much more useful, and generally make a better impact on the overall dynamic of the game. Engineers can now place down these blueprints and also have other players build them with them. Every player now comes equipped with a hammer regardless of what class they're in, and can assist engineers in getting fortifications online. There is now a bullet penetration system in the game, which is fantastic, and whether it's a thick tree or a very thin branch, every single asset in the game has some kind of bullet penetration mechanic that will allow higher caliber and smaller caliber rounds to have different levels of effectiveness. Higher caliber rounds can penetrate thicker objects, whereas small caliber rounds don't have that same versatility. Grass has been completely overhauled in the game, as have some shadows. All grass will now load in as intended for the lowest and highest possible graphical settings, meaning that it is now a useful level of concealment, and you'll no longer get empty fields. Another main change as well is that shadows operate in a similar way now, where the lowest graphical shadow setting will still retain essential shadows for concealment. There is a new hitbox and limb damage system in the game as well. If you're noticing that some of your bullets are taking longer to kill players, it's because hitboxes are much more refined than they previously were, and also limb damage is now separate from upper torso damage, meaning that if you shoot somebody in the arms or legs, you will expect to do more bullets in order to get them down. Medic icons are now available above medic players' heads. Garrisons have been changed in the sense that there are now only a maximum of 8 garrisons, and the distance between them is now 200 meters. The idea behind this is to increase separation and spread between garrisons and not allow one area to soak up all of the action. All tankers now come equipped with a blowtorch that will allow them to fix their own vehicles, which is a much needed change for the tanking class. And speaking of tanks, coaxial machine guns and hull MGs no longer have random tracers that aren't reflective of the bullets that go in. Now, when you fire a machine gun on the tank, you should accurately be able to see where the tracers go and actually change them for the better and to be more accurate with a tank machine gun, generally speaking. Grenade damage values have been slightly reduced in terms of their blast radius. The M1 and bar have had a recoil adjustment to make them slightly harder to keep on target at over 50 meters. Handheld supply boxes for both medics and ammunition are now in the game, which is very effective and useful. Hit detection has also been improved in the game, as well as damage feedback, and you can actually now see who is critically wounded, who is dead, and who needs some level of healing. Vote kicking has been improved to no longer need the whole server to basically vote kick a guy, and it scales with the number of people on a team. So if you have less people on a team and you vote kick somebody, it will require less votes. If you have more, it will require a little bit more. There have been netcode, GPU and CPU optimizations in the game, and most players can expect to see some serious improvements in terms of frame rate. Immersion in the game has also received a boost with a brand new set of tank shell explosion FX, artillery shell explosion FX, AP and AT mine explosion FX, as well as bombing run FX as well. There's also a visible outline on the smoke of a bazooka and Panzerschreck on all video settings now, as well as the sound that they've added for that. There is also a new commander ability allowing you to convert some previous other resources into different resources. So if you have more manpower or more ammunition than you need, you can convert them into different things. At the end of the patch notes, the developers also said that they're working on some things in no specific order that will be coming to the game hopefully soon. There is an armor vehicle physics and functionality revisit changing everything in that category, although these things aren't in Update 8, I should stress. They're also intended to fix low quality first person textures on weapons and vehicles. They're also looking to do things such as investigating the scope and scale of the campaign mode that they intend to add, a continued overhaul of the SFX, a new front, optimization passes, 3 new unannounced maps, a new weapon class as well as the FG-42 coming to the German faction, creating new vehicles, a melee implementation, new commander abilities, and new mortars, night modes, and flamethrowers. These are all things that will come in the game after Update 8. So folks, that's everything for Update 8 in Hell Let Loose. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like, please leave a sub, and I'll be streaming Hell Let Loose Update 8 regularly in the UK at 6 PM. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again in another one.